I still remember the exact weight of the silence that followed those words. It wasn't dramatic. There was no crash, no shouting, no door slamming. The kitchen was warm. The kettle had just clicked off. I had a half-folded dish towel in my hands, and outside the window, the maple tree in the front yard was turning that deep, honest red it always gets in October. The kind of red that makes you think about time, about what it means to hold something too long. My daughter was standing in the doorway between the kitchen and the hallway, 17 years old, wearing a cream-colored hoodie with a small coffee stain near the pocket that I had tried to wash out twice and failed both times. Her hair was in a loose braid over one shoulder. She had my mother's eyes, green with a little amber at the center. And she had my exact same way of standing when she was uncomfortable, weight on her left foot, arms loosely crossed, chin slightly down. She said it quietly, almost gently, like she'd been practicing the delivery so it wouldn't land as hard as she feared. I just feel more comfortable with her mom. She gets me in a way I can't really explain. I think I love her more. As a parent, I didn't say anything for a long moment. I kept folding the dish towel. I set it on the counter. I turned to the kettle and poured hot water into my cup, even though my cup was already full. And then I said, "Okay, sweetheart," because what do you say what words exist for a moment like that? When the person you built your entire life around, the person you showed up for in every way you knew how, tells you that someone else is more loved. A woman she's known for 4 years. A woman who drives a nicer car and keeps a prettier house and never has to say no because she has the freedom to always say yes. What do you say? You say okay. You pour the tea. And later, when she goes back to her room and the house settles into its familiar evening quiet, you sit down at the kitchen table and you hold yourself together with both hands, and you wonder where exactly it was that you got lost. My name is Carol. I'm 58 years old. I live in a 2-bedroom house in a suburb of Columbus, Ohio, the kind of neighborhood with sidewalks and old oak trees, and houses that all look similar from the outside but feel completely different once you step through the door. I work in medical billing, have for almost 22 years. I drive a 2017 Honda Accord with a crack in the passenger mirror that I keep meaning to replace. I have a small garden in the backyard, tomatoes, basil, and the most stubborn roses you have ever seen. Thorny and difficult and absolutely gorgeous in late June. I am, by most measures, an ordinary woman. But ordinary women have extraordinary lives inside them. We always do. We just don't often talk about it. I was married young, 23. His name was David. When I met him, he was exactly the kind of man you think you want at that age. Tall, certain, already building toward something. He had a quiet confidence that I misread for a long time. As steadiness, I didn't understand yet that certainty can sometimes be another word for closed. We had our daughter, Lily, 2 years into the marriage. I remember the morning she was born. It was April, just before sunrise, and the hospital window faced east, and the light came in pale gold and pink, and they put this small, furious, beautiful person in my arms, and I thought, this is the thing. This is what I was made for. I don't know if that's the healthiest thought a new mother can have, but it was the honest one. The early years with Lily were difficult, in the way all early years are, exhausting and miraculous in equal measure. David worked long hours. I worked part-time and handled everything at home. The pediatric appointments, the sleepless nights, the rounds of ear infections, the careful daily management of a small human being learning to exist in the world. I remember one night, when Lily was maybe 2.5, she had a fever hovering at 102 for 3 days. David was away on a business trip. I had slept maybe 4 hours in the previous 2 days. I was sitting on the bathroom floor with her in my lap, her head against my chest running a cool washcloth over her forehead, singing a song I half remembered from my own childhood. She looked up at me with those heavy, glassy eyes and said, in her tiny voice, "Mama, you smell like medicine." And I laughed. Right there on the bathroom tile at 2 in the morning. I laughed until I cried a little. That's motherhood. That's the part nobody frames and hangs on the wall. The 2 a.m. bathroom floor with the off-key lullaby and the child who smells like baby Tylenol, and the exhaustion so deep it becomes its own kind of peace. I did that. I was there for that. Every single time. I need you to hold on to that. Because this story is going to take us some places that hurt, and I need you to know, before we get there, that I showed up. Always. David and I separated when Lily was 11. It wasn't one dramatic thing. It rarely is. It was a long accumulation of smaller things, conversations that never happened, evenings growing quieter and quieter, a growing sense that we were two people sharing a house, but not a life. We went to counseling. We tried. And then we stopped trying, because trying had started to feel like performance. The divorce was finalized 2 weeks before Lily's 12th birthday. I spent that birthday making her grandmother's chicken pot pie, the one with the buttery, flaky crust, and sitting across the table from her in the little kitchen of the apartment I'd just moved into, watching her blow out 12 candles. And I thought, we're going to be okay. The two of us. We're going to be exactly okay. I believed that. I really did. And for a while, it was true. The years between 12 and 15 were hard in the way that single-parent years are hard. Financially stretched, logistically demanding, emotionally heavy. I worked full-time. I made sure she had everything she needed, even when that meant going without myself. I drove her to swim practice at 6 in the morning, to her best friend Maya's house on Friday evenings, to the orthodontist every 6 weeks for the braces she hated, which would, I promised her, be worth it. David saw her every other weekend, and 2 weeks each summer. He was reliable about that. He showed up for his scheduled time. He just never pushed for more. And then, when Lily was just turning 15, David met a woman named Renee. I want to be careful here. I want to be as fair as I can be. Renee is not a villain. I need to say that clearly. When women tell this kind of story, there's always an expectation that the other woman will be painted as cold and calculating. But the truth is more complicated than that, and more painful. Renee is attractive, 42, a few years younger than me. She has a natural ease in social situations that I have always had to work a little harder for. She runs her own interior design business. She owns a beautiful older home that she has, professionally and lovingly, turned into something out of a magazine. Warm lighting, thoughtful details, the kind of kitchen where everything has a place and nothing is cluttered. She was genuinely warm to Lily from the beginning, not in a forced, trying too hard way, in a natural, curious, interested way. She asked Lily questions and actually listened to the answers. She took her shopping. She let her help with small decorating projects. She made elaborate weekend breakfasts. She had the time and resources to do those things because she didn't carry the schedule I carried, or the weight. And Lily, who was 15 and longing for glamour and ease and a feeling of belonging, responded to her like a flower tilting toward a warm window. I noticed it gradually, the way Lily started mentioning Renee more. The way she talked about her dad's house, Renee's house, really, with a brightness that didn't always appear when she talked about ours. The way she started asking for extra weekends there. Not because anything was wrong at home, she said, just because she liked it there. I said yes. Of course I said yes. What mother says no to that? But I noticed, and I stored it in a quiet corner of my heart and told myself it was fine, normal, just the shiny newness of something different. I told myself that until the October morning in the kitchen, when Lily stood in the doorway in her cream-colored hoodie and said those words, that night, After Lily had gone to her room and I heard the soft click of her door, I stood at the kitchen window for a long time. The maple tree outside was very still. The street was that quiet middle of the evening quiet, the hour after dinner before the neighborhood went fully dark. A neighbor across the street was walking his small terrier in the red collar it always wore. A car moved slowly past. A porch light came on. The ordinary world, going about its business. I tried to think about what I had done wrong. That's the first place a mother's mind goes, the immediate reflexive turning inward. Where did I fail? What did I miss? What could I have done differently? I thought about the years. The 2 a.m. fevers, the pot pies, the swim practice mornings, the homework sat through at the kitchen table, the permission slips, the ones signed and the ones forgotten and scrambled for at the last minute, the talks after hard school days, the birthdays always remembered, the ordinary, endless, unglamorous daily love of showing up. And then I thought about what Renee offered, the lovely kitchen, the Saturday brunches, the shopping trips, the attention that didn't come with the undercurrent of exhaustion that mine sometimes carried, the ease of a life where you didn't have to worry so much. And then the thought that hurt most cleanly arrived. Maybe what Lily was saying wasn't really about love. Maybe she was saying that with Renee, she didn't have to see the cost. She didn't have to watch someone struggle. She didn't have to carry the weight of being loved by someone who was tired. That thought sat in my chest for a very long time. I called my sister Diane that night. She's 4 years older than me, lives in Pittsburgh, and has a way of listening I've depended on since I was young. She doesn't rush to fix things. She doesn't rush to reassure. She just listens. I told her what Lily had said. I kept my voice steady, mostly. There was a long quiet on the line. Then Diane said, "Oh, Carol, not pity, not solutions. Just acknowledgement, the simple act of being witnessed." "What did you say to her?" Diane asked. I said okay. That's probably the right answer. I know. It still felt like nothing. Most right answers do. I didn't bring it up with Lily for about a week. I needed to find the ground under me first, to figure out what I actually wanted to say versus what I was afraid of saying. There's a difference, and with teenagers, you have to wait until those two things are no longer pointing in opposite directions. When I finally talked to her, it was a Sunday afternoon. We were on the back porch. I'd made us each a cup of tea. The afternoon was mild and gold in that particular way late October has, just before the real cold comes. Lily was on her phone, and I asked if we could talk, and she set it face down on the table, which she doesn't always do. So I knew she was trying. I said, "I've been thinking about what you said last week." She went still. "Mom, I didn't mean it to be hurtful. I know you didn't." I turned my mug in my hands, and I'm not asking you to take it back. I just want to understand what you meant. Because I think it's more complicated than it came out. She was quiet a moment. Then, she makes me feel like things are easy. Like the world is manageable. When I'm there, there's no stress. Everything is nice. And I know that's probably not real life, but she stopped. Then, quietly, "I don't know. Sometimes this house feels heavy. This house feels heavy." I turned that sentence over in my mind for a long time. And I said, "I think I understand that. And you're right. Some of it probably isn't real. But the weight you feel here, that's not the weight of anything going wrong. That's just the weight of a real life. And I never wanted to hide that from you because I thought if I did, I wouldn't be teaching you anything." I have gone back to that memory many times since. It's what I return to when I need to remember that I have had, in this ordinary life, moments of pure completeness. I didn't know, driving that dark highway, that I was already in some of the best of what I thought I was still building toward. I thought the best was ahead. I thought Lily and I were just beginning. I didn't know how fast time moves when you're not paying attention to yourself. The winter after that October conversation was the hardest of my recent years. Not because anything dramatic happened. Lily went back and forth between houses as always. We had our dinners, our Sunday teas, our ordinary routines. She was kind to me. I was steady for her. On the surface, nothing looked broken. But inside, I was very quiet. And not the peaceful kind. I was questioning everything. Every choice I'd made in the past 20 years, every sacrifice, though I started wondering if sacrifice was even the right word, or whether I had confused surrender with devotion. Whether I had, in giving so much of myself to being a mother, slowly disappeared myself. I stopped sleeping well. I would lie awake at 3 a.m, listening to the house, the furnace cycling on, the refrigerator humming, the occasional car outside, and think about my life in a way that felt both too large and too small at the same time. I gained a little weight that winter, from too much wine and too little movement, and the particular kind of emotional eating that comes from trying to fill a hollow feeling when you don't yet know what shape the hollow is. I let my hair grow past the point where I liked it, because I couldn't summon the energy to make an appointment. I said no to 2 invitations from my friend Patricia, dinner, then a movie, and felt worse for the isolation. This is what grief with no good name does to a body. It doesn't announce itself. It just accumulates, quietly, like dust in a room you've stopped opening. The thing that began to change things was a garden. In late February, we had one of those teasing Ohio warm spells. The temperature touched 50 degrees and you don't entirely believe it. I went out to look at the rose bed in the backyard, brown and stiff, and seemingly dead, the way roses look all winter. But when I crouched down and looked closely at the canes, I could see small, tight, deep red buds just beginning to form where the new growth would come from. I sat back on my heels in the cold mud and just looked at those buds for a long time. Something is still growing, even when it doesn't look like anything is happening, even when everything looks finished and cold and over. I know that sounds simple, maybe even small, as revelations go. But something shifted in me that afternoon. Some quiet permission opened up. I went inside and called Patricia. We rescheduled the dinner. We went the following Friday. I had the salmon. She had the pasta. We split a bottle of Chardonnay and talked for 3 hours, and I laughed, genuinely, unexpectedly, more than once. I had forgotten what it felt like to laugh without performing it. I started walking in the mornings, nothing dramatic. Just 30 minutes through the neighborhood early enough that the light was still blue-gray and the streets were mostly empty. I wore my old puffy coat and a wool hat I'd had for 15 years, and I walked the same route every day, past houses with their sleeping windows and bare trees, and the occasional dog walker who looked as half awake as I did. There is something about walking, about the steady rhythm of your own feet on pavement, about having nowhere to be and no one to take care of, just for 30 minutes, just yourself and the morning air and the sound of your own breathing. I started to feel very slowly like a person again, not just a function. I found a therapist through my work's assistance program, a woman named Dr. Anita Patel. Kind eyes, very direct, an office that smelled of sandalwood and had a small waterfall on the windowsill. In our first session, I told her what Lily had said, and she didn't immediately try to solve it. She asked what I had felt when Lily said those words. I said, like I'd been erased. What does being erased feel like? In your body. I thought about it, really thought, not the surface version, but the underneath one. And I said, like disappearing, like all those years of work had been invisible, unwitnessed. Did you witness them yourself? That question sat in the room for a long time. No, I hadn't. I had been too busy doing the work to actually witness it. I had expected someone else to keep the record of what I had given. And when no one was keeping the right record, not the one I needed, I felt as though the work hadn't existed at all. But it had existed. It had been absolutely real. I just hadn't been its own witness. I started keeping a journal that spring. I hadn't written regularly since college. It felt clunky at first, self-conscious, the way any practice feels after a long absence. But I kept at it, a few sentences each evening, sometimes more. I wrote about the specific memories. The bathroom floor at 2 a.m. the April morning Lily was born. The first day of kindergarten, when she had turned at the classroom door and given me the most composed look a 5-year-old has ever managed, clearly deciding she was fine, that this was fine, that she absolutely did not need to cry, and then had burst into tears anyway. And I had knelt in the hallway and held her and told her she was the bravest thing I had ever seen. I wrote about the drives, the dinners, the book reports, the school plays, the skinned knees, the broken friendships, the first heartbreak she told me about, carefully, tentatively, sitting on her bed at 13 with her knees to her chest and her voice very small. I had been there for all of it, and writing it down made it real in a way nothing else had managed. I could see it. I had been here. This life was full and real and mine. And it had mattered. By spring, something had shifted enough that I could feel the difference. Not fixed. Grief doesn't work like fixing. But lighter, more honest. I started looking at the situation with Lily differently. Not, what did I do wrong? Not, why isn't my love enough? But something closer to, what was she actually trying to tell me? What she was saying, I came to believe, was not that she loved me less. She had never said that. Children, even older ones, don't always have the vocabulary for what they actually feel. What Lily had been trying to say, in the only words she had at 17, was that she was tired, that our house and our life carried a weight a teenager sometimes needs relief from, that Renee's world felt light and easy and free of complication. And she was drawn to that. I couldn't give her an easier life. I couldn't change the financial reality, or erase the years of doing it alone, or transform my modest house into something showroom perfect. That was not the life I had. But I could think about what only I could give her. I am her history. I am the person who was there in the beginning, in the hospital room with the pale gold sunrise. I am the one who holds every version of her, the furious small newborn, the fever-bright toddler, the composed then weeping kindergartner, the tentative 13-year-old with her first broken heart. I hold the complete record of who she has been, and no one else does. Not David, not Renee, not anyone. That is, in fact, everything. I told her some of this eventually, not all at once. You learn with your children that things have to be given in small portions, like medicine. You can't pour the whole bottle at once. But one evening in late spring, when she was helping me in the garden, she'd started coming out when I weeded, sometimes just sitting on the low stone wall and talking while I worked. I said, "I've been thinking a lot. Since October." She looked up from her phone. About what I said. About a lot of things. About who I am outside of being your mom. About what I want this next chapter of my life to look like. I pressed my thumb into the soil around a rose cane. I think I lost myself a little. Over the years, I made you the whole thing. And that wasn't fair to either of us. She was quiet. Then, "What do you mean? You need a mother who is also a person, who has her own life, her own joy, her own reasons for being." And I haven't always been that. I've just been available, present, which matters, but it's not the whole picture. "I never wanted you to disappear," she said quietly. "I didn't say it right in October. I know, but I'm glad you said it, because it made me look at something I'd been avoiding." She thought about that. Then, "Are you happier now than you were in winter?" "Yes," I said, and I meant it. "I think so. And then she got up off the stone wall and came and knelt beside me in the dirt. And she started pulling weeds, not very efficiently, she's never had the patience for it, but there, right beside me. I started taking a pottery class that summer, Tuesday evenings at the Community Arts Center, something I'd been vaguely interested in for years, but had never let myself sign up for because there was always something more pressing, someone who needed something more urgently. I was terrible at it. My bowls were lopsided. My mugs held their shape reluctantly. My instructor, a patient man named Marcus with clay permanently under his fingernails, said I was making progress every week. I believed him only about half the time, but it didn't matter. The point wasn't the bowls. The point was my hands in the clay, the particular meditative focus of making something that had no function except to exist, the small community of other beginners fumbling alongside me, the Tuesday night air smelling of earth and clean, honest work, something about making things with your hands, even imperfect things. There's an aliveness in it I had been missing for a very long time. Lily left for college in August, a school in Michigan, a good one, right for her, chosen for its environmental studies program, and nothing else. I helped her pack. I drove her up. I carried boxes up 3 flights of stairs in a dormitory smelling of new carpet and young possibility. I made her bed with the comforter we'd picked out together, dusty blue with tiny white moons, while she organized her bookshelf with the focused energy she gets when something really matters. And when it was time for me to go, she walked me to my car in the August heat and held on for a long time. I breathed in the smell of her hair. I memorized the weight of her arms around my shoulders. I thought, this is what you have. This is real. She said, I love you, Mom. You know that, right? I know, I said, and I meant it differently than I had before, more cleanly, without the fear underneath it. I drove back to Ohio alone, 4 hours. I stopped once for coffee at a rest stop somewhere in the middle of Michigan, and stood outside for a moment in the late afternoon heat, looking at the flat horizon and the enormous sky. The absence of her was in me, yes, large and real and aching, but the feeling underneath it was not nothing. It was full of something. This is what nobody tells you about the children growing up and leaving. You get to find out who you are again. It's not only loss. It's also a door. I drove home with the radio up loud. Classic rock. The kind I listened to in college. The kind that still sounds like freedom. I sang along at the top of my voice, badly, with no one to hear me. The road was long and straight, and mine. It's been almost a year now since that October morning in the kitchen. Lily calls on Sunday evenings usually. We talk for 45 minutes to an hour, about everything and nothing. Her roommate, her professor, the dining hall she tolerates, she sounds, more often than not, happy. She talks about Renee sometimes, less than she used to. Renee is still in her life, and I have arrived, finally, at something like genuine peace about that. Not because it doesn't sometimes sting, but because I understand now that love is not a fixed quantity. Lily loving Renee does not take from what she feels for me. It means she is a person capable of many loves, which is exactly what I raised her to be. My garden is preparing for winter now. The tomatoes are finished, the roses cut back, the basil gone until spring. But there are still late-season chrysanthemums by the back fence, deep rust and gold, and in the mornings before my walk, I stop and something is always still growing. I think about all of this differently now, about what it means to love someone and let them choose, about how being a good mother is not the same as being an indispensable one, about how the best thing I ever did for Lily was not to make myself the center of her world, but to be so steadily, honestly, unmistakably myself, even when I was tired, even when the house felt heavy, that she would always know the way home. I am not just a mother, I am a woman, with hands learning to shape things from clay, a body that walks through dawn streets, a garden that comes back every spring no matter what winter does to it, a sister in Pittsburgh who listens, a friend who will share Chardonnay and laugh without requiring performance, a small, honest life that is mine. I spent so many years waiting to be witnessed, waiting for someone to notice the cost, to say, I see what you gave. I see that it mattered. And what I found on the other side of the hardest year I've had in a long time is this: I can be my own witness. I can hold the record of what I gave. I can know, in the way knowledge eventually settles into bone, that what I did was real and true and worth something, regardless of whether anyone else is keeping count. The morning Lily was born, pale gold light came through the hospital window, and I held her small, furious body and thought, this is what I was made for. I was right, but I wasn't fully right about what it meant. I was made for love, yes, but I was also made for my own life, for clay and roses and Chardonnay and dawn streets, for hard conversations and gradual healings, for the long, patient, quiet work of becoming a person who knows her own worth. Lily is going to be okay, and so am I. If you've been listening, and something in this story felt like something you've carried in your own chest, I want to say you are seen. The work no one tallied, the showing up, the staying, the 2 a.m. bathroom floors. It counted. Every bit of it counted. Love doesn't always look the way we expected. Sometimes the child we poured everything into grows toward a different light for a while. Sometimes the love we gave comes back in forms we almost don't recognize. Sometimes it takes sitting in the dark with a cup of tea before we begin to understand. But it's there. It doesn't leave. And neither do we. If this story moved you, share it. Leave a comment. Tell me your story. You are not alone in this. And if you're new here, subscribe. Stay close. These quiet, honest conversations are why we're here, together.